All right, last but not least, we need to implement the token refresh endpoint. We've got our sign up and sign in created, but we need a way for the user to refresh their access token, which is short-lived, using their refresh token. And just a reminder, we're actually going to be issuing a brand new token pair when this refresh endpoint is invoked, because it's better security to actually provide a new refresh token as well. So let's go ahead and add a new handler for refreshing our tokens. So it'll be API server token refresh handler. Once again, we're going to return a wrapped HTTP handler func. And what we're going to accept as the payload to this endpoint is just a refresh token. And it'll take in a refresh token string. And in order to decode this, just a reminder, we need to implement the validate method because it must be a validator. So let's go ahead and validate the payload. Okay. Return nil. Okay, so now what we want to do is parse the current token using our JWT manager. So if we can't parse the token, it's unauthorized. And what we want to do now is get the subject from the token, which is our user ID. So let's go ahead and do that. And we want to convert that into the UUID so that we can use that to look up the existing token record. Because what we want to do is make sure that the current refresh token is actually valid, and we want to make sure that it isn't expired. And we can do that by querying the database row and checking that information. Because there could be a scenario where maybe we want to revoke access to this user, or there may be a scenario where we want to revoke access for this user, and we would do that by either deleting the record from the database, the refresh token record, or modifying its expiration to be expired already. So we're going to validate both of those things. So let's go ahead and do uuid.parse, user ID string, and this will be status unauthorized. So now we can actually query for the current refresh token row. And I don't necessarily want to return status unauthorized here. If some other issue happened, I will return status unauthorized if the token record does not exist. So we can check. First, let's just set the default to internal server error. But if the error is SQL error no rows, then we will say status equal to status unauthorized. And then in this case, we'll just provide this status variable. Okay. Now what we want to do is verify that the current refresh token is not expired. Otherwise, we need to make the user go through the entire sign-in flow again. So let's say if current refresh token record expires at is before time.now. Then we'll just say unauthorized refresh token is expired. And at this point, we should be able to just go ahead and create our new token pair. So let's go ahead and do that. That looks good. Let's return an error if there's an error. And now we need to go ahead and remove any existing tokens for the user. So now that we've validated that the current token is fine and the current refresh token is valid, we've generated our new pair. We need to remove any existing access tokens from the database, and then we can persist a new one from the newly generated pair. So let's go ahead and do s store refresh token store delete user tokens. We just provide the context and the user ID, and we'll just validate that there's no error. At this point, we can now insert a new record in the database. And we can call it the same way. I don't need to actually access the returned value, so I'm just going to create it inline, or check the error inline in the condition as well. So I'm just going to check the error like this as well. We provide the context, the user ID, and the newly created refresh token. So at this point, we have persisted it in the database, and we've removed the old tokens that may exist. What we need to do is make sure that we have a response to return so that we can encode that and send it to the user. So let's go ahead and create that. It's going to have the access token as a string and the refresh token as a string. Okay. So we'll do if error encode API response of token refresh response. We pass in data, the address or a pointer to token refresh response. Access token is token pair, access token raw, and refresh token is token pair refresh token dot raw. And let's pass the status and the response writer. We can go ahead and check this error and return nil since everything was successful at this point. Okay, so we are now in a good spot to go ahead and test this. So we can go ahead and spin up our server again. Okay. And what I want to do is sign in. I now have access to a access token and a refresh token. So what I want to do is curl-x post. We'll pass in data is a JSON payload containing a refresh token field. And it's going to be this refresh token. It's going to be this refresh token. And we'll do HTTP localhost 5000 /auth/refresh, and we'll pipe that into JQ as well. So we've got curl post request, data is refresh token, auth refresh, parse error. Let's see what this is. And of course, it's a 404 because classic me. So post auth token. Oops. We'll just do refresh, and then we'll do s token refresh handler. Bounce the server. I realize at this point I should have used something like air just to detect changes and restart my server, but whatever. Here we are. Okay, so I can request the refresh, and it did do that. So I should have piped it into JQ, but let me do that again so you can see it more clearly. Unauthorized. Oh, it's because I removed the previous token. So here's our new refresh token. That was actually a good little test to do. This is our new refresh token. I'm going to make the request again. And now I've got a new access token and refresh token as long as my refresh token that I'm providing is still valid. So great. This looks like a good spot to wrap up our auth section. We implemented a JWT manager. We implemented all of our auth endpoints. And now we can start taking a look at some of this other business logic related stuff as part of this project. So we've still got to implement a couple of reports endpoints. We want to be able to create a report, get a report by the ID, publish it to an SQSQ, and have a worker pick it up and submit a request to an API, build a CSV, load that into a S3 bucket, and have the client be able to download the results from an S3 bucket. So we've got a lot of work ahead of us, finally starting to get into the meat of this project now that we've got some of the more boilerplate API related stuff out of the way. So cool. I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.